like Pete Hegseth, whose mama said he's trash. Pete, whose mama said he's trash, Hegseth. Representative Paul Gosar. Hey, YouTube, how y'all doing? We just heard a clip from Michelle Wu giving Representative Paul Gosar all the business, because he was basically like, how are we supposed to make your community safe? You got all these immigrants. She was like, cutting immigrants ain't gonna do nothing for safety. How about you stop? How about you pass some legislation so we have some gun control? How about you pass some legislation that will stop you from cutting Medicaid, which we're about to talk about in just a second. Giving him the business. And Paul, his own family says he's trash, Gosar. Because remember during the election when he was running, his family all came out and it was like, don't elect that man. He's a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad man. We'll talk about why later. He's a whole ass racist. But today I want to get into some of the news that's driving us today. Before we go to commercial break, where you will all be able to hear the virtual town hall that we hosted with the members of the Congressional Black Caucus and the members of the Democratic Caucus, you will be able to hear that on Urban View, not on YouTube yet. You'll be able to hear that on Urban View in the second hour. And I think the audio we're going to be making available to those of you who don't have Urban View. But basically, we're in a moment right now where the whole ass world is preparing for war. Canada is like, listen, I don't know what's happening south of the border. And they talking about us when they say south of the border. I don't know what's happening south of the border. What I do know is we taking all these American products off our shelves. You're going to hit us with these 25% tariffs. We taking all your shit off our shelves. But now here's the thing that happened. And I mentioned this yesterday, but it really is happening. Howard Lutnick, who is Trump's money man, who actually understands what it means when people implement tariffs, and he actually understands who is paying the tariffs. He was like, well, what's really going to happen is we see that Canada has decided to come back with a counter offer, and Mexico has decided to come back with a counter offer. So I'm sure we'll be able to work something out. It wasn't even 24 damn hours. It wasn't even 24 hours after Trump issues these tariffs, when they're already trying to roll back the tariffs, trying to pretend in front like Canada and Mexico. Okay, Canada and Mexico is standing 10 toes down and like, we don't like you no more. We used to be friends. You can't sit with us no more. Canada's like, basically, they're trying to destroy the Canadian economy because they really are trying to make us the 51st state, because they really do want access to our minerals and resources, which they don't have, and which elongated muskrat, their actual president, needs in order to get his little monkey boy flying ships into not just the tip of space, but actually to Mars, because that's what they really want. But that's not the worst part of it. The worst part of it, we now see, according to Financial Times, which y'all know is one of my favorite international papers, or a paper that covers international news that I appreciate, not because I think they're always accurate, but because they let me know how the people with the money are thinking. But they have an article that's, and y'all know I believe in understanding what the people with money are thinking, because they are rarely thinking about us in any favorable sort of way. But according to the reports, the United States has limited Kiev's in Ukraine, has limited Ukraine's capacity to hit back at Russia by ending the flow of intelligence information. One of the things that the folks in Ukraine were counting on and had depended on as they were navigating this war against Russia, and I shouldn't even say a war against Russia, navigating this war that Russia started by invading their whole country, one of the things they have relied upon is American intelligence and information. Well, now Donald Trump, who frankly, if he ain't a Russian asset, I don't know what more he could be doing to help Russia if he were a Russian asset. Like, I don't know how much, what would he be doing differently than what he's doing right now, seeing as he's giving Putin everything that Putin wants. But that's not the point that I'm mentioning right now. The point I'm mentioning right now is not only has the United States cut off the flow of information, Donald Trump is actually now floating the idea of sending back, deporting Ukrainians. Now, this is very, very interesting, because what we are seeing here are the very same sorts of measures that typically are used against the blacks and the melanated migrants, used as against the whites. Now, I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know how white Americans are going to feel about other white people, though they be foreigners. They are white. And I just don't know how they're going to feel about sending back 250,000 Ukrainians. But what this also does is it lets the entire world know something that we as Black Americans have had to learn. If you have a plan for freedom, if you have a plan for liberation, if you have a plan for healthcare, for education, if any of your plans require a group of people like the Americans to approve it, to fund it, to support it, to vote in favor of it, to consent to it, to not veto it, to rally around it, to engage with it. If your plan for freedom, liberation, education, healthcare, financial security, whatever it is, requires people like white Americans to help you out, well, then I got a bridge from Mar-a-Lago over to Russia to sell you, because that shit ain't gonna happen. That dog won't hunt. I've always wanted to use that phrase. That dog won't hunt. And what we're also seeing is that the French have entered the chat. And the French have said the Americans, we can no longer depend on them. I don't know, is that French? That's more like a French German accent. But Emmanuel Macron is like, well, we ain't doing this shit with y'all no more. We ain't doing this with y'all no more. Y'all are ridiculous. Y'all gonna have to choose what side you want. We are also seeing that nations like Germany, Deutschland, they are investing heavily in their military apparatus, things that they have not done since the end of the war. Now, I know you might be thinking, what war are you talking about? Afghanistan? No, not the Afghanistan war. The Iraq war? No, not the Iraqi war. When Germans talk about the war, they talking about World War II, where Hitler got his ass handed to him, sort of, by his own, you know what I mean. So when Germans are talking about investing in their military in way, and one of the reasons they have not had to do this is because American military bases have largely remained in Europe ever since the end of the World War. And now that Americans are like, no, we done with you, we don't like you, can't stand you no more, bitch, we don't like none of y'all. Now that America is doing that, Germany is like, okay, so what we gonna do is invest in our security defense operations. The entire European continent is in defense mode right now, and in some ways offensive mode right now, because here's the thing for them, Ukraine is the canary in the coal mine. Ukraine is a nation that sits between them and Russia. And the last time Russia was on the move, that's how we got to the World War that I was just talking about. So they're not having it. They're upset about it. But again, the world is learning. If you are dependent on white Americans for anything, you need to remember Professor Derek Bell, amazing civil rights attorney, now an ancestor, one of my favorite law school professors. You need to remember his theory of interest convergence. And this is a theory that squarely situates us in a reality with white Americans. And according to Derek Bell's theory of interest convergence, love our righteous whites, but you know as well as I do that what I'm about to say is true as hell. According to Professor Bell's theory of interest convergence, white Americans will only support the expansion of rights for Black people and other non-white people to the point that those white Americans believe that expanding those rights for Black people and other non-white people will provide them, white people, some benefit. At the moment, howsoever, that white Americans believe that further helping you is going to hurt them, well then, good damn it, they are no longer going to be willing to help you. Clem and Vern are done. They're only willing to expand rights for anybody, be it white, Black, anybody, to the extent that it's going to be in the interest of white people. And so the whole world is now learning what Black Americans have had to learn for decades, generations, centuries, and that we are now grappling with ourselves in some very real ways. So that's what's happening on the world stage. What's happening here locally is kind of reminiscent of that. So you all, for those of you who watched the State of the Union, I did not. I saw plenty of clips, however. I was watching State of Our Union, Roland Martin's stream, which was phenomenal. A shout out to Reverend William Barber. We got to get Reverend William Barber back on the show. I mean, please remind me to tell Jonah that I want to reach out to him and have him back on. And then there was the State of the People Media, which was Angela Rye and a number of the folks who are part of Native Land Pod, who are operating in that space. So that's what I was watching. But what we all saw happen, whether you saw it in clips, whether you saw it in those spaces, was Representative Al Green had the most effective form of protest. Now, there were some people, some congressional members who sat in those seats in the halls of Congress. And one of the reasons they did that was because, quite frankly, and this was something that one of our guests reminded me of yesterday, quite frankly, had all the Democrats boycotted the congressional, the State of the Union, the Republicans would have just gotten seat fillers. They would have filled those seats with interns. You would not have seen a physical absence, because they would have done what they do at concerts or, or comedy shows. If they're not enough people in the front row, they'll bring people down to fill them in, seat fillers. And so I wasn't mad at people still going, but when people chose to get up and leave, the cameras didn't cover it. So you missed a lot of people who walked out. And if you're not following them on social media, you might not even know that happened. But what Al Green did, Representative Al Green, he stood up and had a gold-tipped cane in his hand. And with that cane, he shouts out to the Mango Mussolini, you do not have a mandate to cut Medicare. You do not have a mandate to cut Medicare. And he said it over and over, to the point where MAGA Mike Johnson, the Muppet of the MAGA movement, gets on the mic and is basically saying, the Speaker of the House is going to call you to order. I will have the marshals remove you. And Al Green's like, do what you got to do, son. I ain't new to this. I'm true to this. And he's waving his cane in the air. And he's saying, you do not have a mandate. And he's saying that to Donald Trump because Donald, y'all, he's trying to forgaze y'all. He's trying to tell y'all, I got a mandate. I, Mango Mussolini, I have a mandate It's huge. It's bigly. And the reality is he won by less than 1.5%. 1.5%. Not even 50% of the vote did he secure. So there is no mandate. And he ran on an electoral campaign and said he was never not going to do anything related to Project 2025. Got into office and is doing everything related to Project 2025. You ain't got no mandate, son. But this effort to cut Medicaid is heating up because remember, what are we? We're on March the 6th. Remember, the continuing resolution that authorizes the money that's necessary to fund the government, that runs out in 2 weeks. No, a week. It runs out in a week, March 14th. And they have to pass another budget in order to allow the government to continue moving. Otherwise, the government's going to shut down. Some of you might realistically say, well, Lurie, the government already looked a little fugazi. It's kind of shut down already. I know, but it ain't like what it would be if it's about to be shut down for real. They have to pass another budget. And what they want to do, however, is they promised their owners, they promised the billionaire donors who own them that they were going to have a permanent tax cut. The tax cut that Donald Trump implemented in 2017, that $1.9 trillion worth of tax cut that blew up our federal deficit, and the federal deficit that we currently have now, 1/4 of it was reached under Donald elongated Trump's I'm sorry, I combined presidents. Sorry. 1/4 of the budget that we currently have right now was reached because of Donald Trump and that tax cut and the gross amounts of spending that were going on. Admittedly, we were in a pandemic, but we could have navigated that pandemic healthily had we had somebody who actually understood what was happening at the helm. Hey, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that person is not you. Try to figure out what measles is. Robert F. Kennedy going around telling people that measles can be cured with antibiotics. And measles, I believe, is a whole ass virus. And you don't cure a virus with antibiotics. You need antivirals. You need penicillin. You need vaccines. But what do I know? I just pay attention to doctors who actually know. And none of those doctors are named Robert F. Kennedy because he is what? Not a doctor at all. Where was I going with this? Oh, yeah. So they want to cut Medicaid. But y'all, it ain't just that they want to cut Medicaid. They want to cut out hundreds of billions of dollars of all of the social safety net services that we rely upon. Now, here's the thing that they did. They were sneaky with it because Republicans, they are very good at being liars. They're really great liars. What they did was they didn't say, we're going to cut Medicaid. We're going to cut Social Security. We're going to cut Medicare and SNAP and food benefits and free lunch programs. They didn't say that. What they said was they're going to cut funding for the committees that oversee Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security and food stamps and free lunch programs. So they'll never have to say, they can always say, I never voted to cancel Medicaid. But you voted to cancel the funding for the committee. And if the committee is going to have its funding cut, the only way it can cut its funding is to cut Medicaid. So they're going around their back to scratch the elbow, but scratch that itch, they are going to. And so you got to be clear about that. This is why you got to call your electeds. You have to call them. You have to email them. You have to ask them because many of them are vulnerable. However, as Al Green stood up in that chamber and did the one form of protest that was actually captured on camera, I wish to God the members of the Congress, the Democratic caucus, the CBC, I wish there had been a groundswell of people that left with him. Or as Lamont King said this morning on Urban View Mornings, what you ain't doing is taking him out. We're going to shut this whole shit down. If you're going to think you're going to toss him out when you had Marjorie Taylor yelling like a Banshee Green, looking like a howler monkey, that she was yelling at the last State of the Union when President Joseph Robinette Biden was in charge. You didn't have a damn thing to say when Lauren Bobo Head Boebert was yelling and screaming like a pack of trash. They ain't get censured. Why are you trying to kick out Al Green? It should have been a whole bunch of people who left with him, but that didn't happen. And then we got these knuckleheads, these knuckle dragging fools. David Axelrod. Damn it, I'm about to be out of time. I just looked at the clock. All right, I got to hurry up. David Axelrod, keep Al Green's name out your mouth. Keep Al Green's name out your damn mouth. You ain't won nothing since 1992. Keep his name out your mouth. Now Al Green, David Axelrod of the Obama bro era. Stay in that era. We don't need you up here no more. Talking about Al Green is despicable. You keep Al Green's name out your mouth. You are not worthy to even speak of his name in this moment. But in addition to cutting Medicaid, y'all, they also gonna cut dental care. Because dental care is not considered health care in this country. Dental care and vision care are extras. Like health includes your body except your teeth and your eyes. And they're about to cut dental care in order to save some funding. So when I talk about the hate chewing and tobacco spitting racists who live up yonder, who ain't found not near one of an N-word that they could actually stomach the side of, and those are the ones who are literally who Lyndon Baines Johnson was talking about when he said, if you can get the lowest white man to believe he's better than the highest black man, it won't matter if you're robbing from him. Hell, he'll give you his pockets to pick. Well, now, Clem and Byrne, the slack-jawed yokels, as Imani Gandy calls them, ain't even going to have teeth in their mouth when they cussing you. because they're about to cut your dental care. We also are learning that federal workers are going back to work because what happens in the federal government, and one of the reasons people work in the federal government is because it's supposed to be job security. A good government job is what they call it. It's supposed to be job security. The challenge is, however, job security and the benefits that come with that job security of being a federal worker are also tied to lower pay. So like the people who are working in the federal government are experts in their field. And I know some of y'all believe, well, there's a lot of people in the federal government who do terrible jobs. You probably do terrible at your job. The people who we're talking about in the federal government are experts at what they do. And we know they're experts at what they do. You know why? Because they got to get hired back. Because after elongated muskrat and the Lost Boys of the Flying Confederacy are firing people all willy-nilly, they're like, oh, we know a lot about hacking things. We don't know anything about nuclear plants or how to stop nuclear warheads from exploding. We're going to have to get them back. Or, oh, we know a lot about hacking because we were affiliated with Russian criminal hacking gangs, but we don't know anything about running the USDA, and we kind of need that. And so they're having to be brought back, not just because elongated muskrat don't know a damn thing but how to buy expertise, but also because the courts have entered the chat. And the courts have said, the Supreme Court, no less. Shout out to Amy Coney Barrett. No, I'm not going to shout you out, girl. You done did too much damage. Shout out to John Roberts. Oh, hell no, John Roberts ain't getting no love because he's a whole ass monster. But those two decided to follow goodness and follow the leadership of Sonia Sotomayor, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Elena Kagan, and was basically like, yeah, you don't have authority to basically destroy the agencies that you're trying to destroy. You don't have the power to do that. And so you're going to have to pay the money. You're going to have to pay the money of the contracts that you canceled because you don't have any authority. Now, the other challenge was Donald Trump's lawyers was going into office talking about elongated muskrat is not an official employee. He's a special buddy, the first buddy of the nation. Well, damn, Mango Mussolini at the State of the Union was like, doggy. Well, he likes to call it Doge. We call it Doggy. The Doggy Agency, headed by Elongated Muskrat. And of course, he ain't call him Elongated Muskrat. That's our special name that we use for him here, in addition to the other names that I call him in my head that I don't put out on air. And so now the courts are going to be pointed to Exhibit A of just how much lying that the liars are doing in the courts. And I don't think that's going to make them feel very good about things. So we got a lot going on. I need y'all to stay watchful, stay prayerful. We're about to go to commercial break. Just want to make sure y'all have a little touch of the news. YouTube, y'all got a 2 for today because we did a test earlier that was just supposed to be a test, and then I got tricked into having lovely conversations with y'all. I enjoyed that. We might do some more of that. Clay and Reese inspired me. But we are getting ready to go to commercial break. On the other side of this break, you on Urban View are going to hear the virtual town hall. I need you to be clear. It was a challenge. There were a lot of logistical challenges that took place. The cameras, you're not ever going to see the video of it because the cameras they were in a secure room and it was a lot of governmental firewalls and whatnot. I want you to listen to what is asked. And I want you to listen with your third eyes and ears as to the responses. I want you to remember, these people do not have a majority in any house. So much of what they can do is introduce legislation that we know ain't gonna pass. They can hold hearings out in the community, and they can get on the bully pulpit and use the microphone. And you're gonna hear some of them attempt to do that in this conversation. It's gonna be a challenge for some of you because there are some answers that, quite frankly, we aren't gonna like. And we're gonna unpack all of it tomorrow, in addition to having our second, I can't remember how many conversations we don't had about post-traumatic slave syndrome. This will be our third post-traumatic slave syndrome conversation, also taking place tomorrow. Friday is going to be amazing. I love every single one of you. Stay tuned for the CBC Town Hall with Lurie Daniel Favors. Bye, YouTube.